You are now listening to Down to the Wire on WMCX 88.9 with host Joe Palminteri and Nick Gianantonio.
Welcome to another episode of Down to the Wire here on WMCX 88.9 West Long Branch, New Jersey. I am Nick Gianantonio along with Joe Palminteri, and today is a big day for the show. Kenny Albert will be coming on at the 3:30 time mark to join us for a little bit of a quick talk, a little interview for you guys and for us as well. So we cannot wait for that to happen. But with that being said, we do only have around 30 minutes for other stuff to get into before Kenny Albert does come on. We will be taking phone calls up until 3:30. Number is, as always, 732-571-3493. Feel free to reach out to us via our socials, TikTok and Instagram, both at dtw.sports, Twitter at Down to the Wire 9. Joe, let's not waste any more time. Let's get right into it because we do have a lot of things to cover. One being the New York Rangers' big win yesterday against Los Angeles Kings at the Garden.
Yeah, I mean, first off, good afternoon, everyone. It's time for Down to the Wire. It's going to be a great show today. Obviously, we got Kenny Albert coming on around the 3:30 mark, as Nick said. But, yeah, let's waste no time. We got about 29 minutes before we get him on. So, the New York Rangers had a really rough week this past week, the last week of February. They went 1-3. Not the most ideal week for a team that's pushing and considered a Stanley Cup threat. So
you got to think the Kane news that's surrounding New York right now is really starting to get to him a little bit, right?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's getting to us. I mean, we've been checking our phones every minute for the past at least 5 days, or even when we heard the news that Kane was still interested and Chris Drury, the general manager, was still interested in bringing Patrick Kane, the elite goal scorer, to the Rangers.
And Chicago's already made a couple other trades also, I've noticed, because every time I get the notification from Kevin Weeks on Twitter, and it's like breaking news, Chicago Blackhawks have traded, and then because the notifications are big enough, it gives me the ... And I'm like, oh my goodness, could this be it? And then it's not. They're ended up trading with the Senators, I think it was.
I mean, 100%, but we also... everybody's been checking their phone a lot for Patrick Kane, but there has been some Ranger fans coming out with the frustration about Igor Shesterkin. Igor Shesterkin and Yaroslav Halak last week alone let up 20 goals, Nick. So Igor's declined to talk to the media twice last week because he's been utterly frustrated with his play. We can see the struggles with the Rangers defense that's also not been contributing to Igor's play as well. Notably, they're not getting back on defense, allowing a lot of breakaway shots, especially, and Igor just hasn't been able to keep up. Some of these goals have looked a little bit like they could have been stopped by Igor. Igor-type plays especially, but nonetheless, Igor did have a really rough week, and so did Halak. Halak didn't have a great week either. They both played twice last week, and ultimately they ended the week 1-3. Obviously, we beat the LA Kings last night. It was a great win. Everybody was holding their breath when Mika Zibanejad got hit by that very hard Drew Doughty slap shot. But nonetheless, he's okay. Keandre Miller, 3-game suspension. It wasn't a good look, spitting on I can't remember the guy's name.
It was Doughty.
It was Doughty. Okay, so it was Doughty spitting on Drew Doughty's face. Not a good look for Keandre Miller. Keandre Miller's looked upon as a young guy to lead for this team. And also, Ryan Lindgren is also going to be out a few games. And then the one shocker for me was Braden Schneider got sent down to Hartford. It was later known that Braden Schneider got sent down for casualty reasons. And the Patrick Kane rumors. I mean, Braden Schneider should be back up with the team if and what it sounds like from these NHL insiders. Hopefully, maybe Kenny Alberts, when he gets on the show, he can offer us a little bit of insight on the whole Patrick Kane deal. If we hear anything about Patrick Kane, we'll be sure to let you know at dtw.sports on our Instagram too, and our Twitter.
A lot of people are saying tomorrow or Wednesday. I keep seeing all over Twitter, a lot of Rangers insiders are saying tomorrow or Wednesday. Obviously, it's not a guarantee, but a lot of people keep seeing Wednesday. But even with Shesterkin last week, didn't have a great week. But last night, I understand the Kings aren't the best team in the world, but nonetheless, they're 13 games above 500, and he goes out there and puts up a 26 for 28 save performance at 929 save percentage, essentially 93%.
That's normally looking like Igor.
Yeah, I really don't think we have to continue to worry about Shesterkin. I was really never worried about him. A guy like Shesterkin, as much as we're talking about how he's had like these struggles post winning the Vezina, I really don't think we have to worry about a guy of his talent. There's really nothing to worry about. Miller, like you said, though, he is somebody that I'm a big fan of. Keandre Miller, the way he carries himself, great character player, kind of just keeps his mouth shut. Very, you don't really see too much emotion out of the guy. And then you see that yesterday, and I was
shocked.
Intentional or not, nonetheless, it happened. And it was something that clearly wasn't very good. I did like the fact that he went out of his way to go find Drew Doughty post-game and apologize, said it wasn't intentional. You have to take his word for it, of course, but, 3-game suspension, you're down another defenseman, Lindgren. Although he is not in a sling, he's probably not going to be playing. You're down to 4 defensemen, especially yesterday. Every single defenseman, Fox, Harper, McCullough, and Trouba, 4 defensemen only in that game. If one more went down, it would have been Tyler Mott, they said. But they all played 20-plus minutes of ice time.
Yeah, and Harper's been playing a little bit of the fourth line, too.
Yeah,
Don't forget that.
He's got to at this point. When you're down to 2 defensive pairings and they're playing 20 minutes and only letting up 2 goals, I mean, it's a credit to your goalie, but it's also a credit to the fight that these guys have, the no quit the no quit New York stuff that they've got. But it was a must win on Sunday. And it had to have been.
Yeah, 100%. But I was also looking at some of the comments and the whole Patrick Kane rumors and stuff, and looking at what we would have to give up. Obviously, Vitaly Kravtsov is not with the team anymore, as he was traded over the weekend to Vancouver.
Mm-hmm.
So
so was Gauthier was traded also.
And Gauthier was traded for Tyler Mott as well. But, I mean, back to the point. I mean, we're very excited to see Patrick Kane hopefully come to New York, as it will definitely boost the offense, the scoring. We have goal scorers all over the ice. But here's the thing. How much better is this defense going to be with Patrick Kane? That's the problem, or that's the situation you got to consider. Depending on what you're going to trade for Patrick Kane, and I've heard rumors that Ben Harper might be included in the trade for Patrick Kane, that apparently Chicago likes Ben Harper and would entertain the deal with him being included. But you got to look at the Gerard Gallant, Chris Drury. They got to look at how it's definitely going to boost their offense. I mean, who wouldn't want to think with Patrick Kane the Rangers are a top 5 offense? But what are we going to think about this defense, Nick? Because they right now they do look vulnerable. They haven't been good. They haven't been really good in the month of February on the defensive side, and notably that's kind of leading towards Igor's and Yaroslav Halak's recent struggles as well. Is that there's a lot of these players are getting a lot of open shots. So that's a concern that I have. But, a lot of people like to blame Igor and Halak for giving up these goals, but ultimately it comes down to the defensive play too, and that's not how we haven't been playing the most stellar defense. So that's just something I wanted to point out.
It doesn't help with Miller being suspended.
And it doesn't help with Miller. Miller's arguably one of our best defensemen. Fox is the best one on the team, but Miller's arguably tied for second with Ryan Lindgren as our Trouba as our second best defenseman player. But it's not a good look for Keandre Miller. It's good to see that he apologized to Drew Doughty, but you gotta, as a 23-year-old kid, you're trying to make a name for yourself, and it's just not a good look for Keandre Miller, in my opinion.
Going back to the defenseman point, this is a very important week, and not only if this Kane trade goes through, because if it does, then you have to see who gets given up for Kane, but Miller's suspended for 3 games. That puts him out for the week. Lindgren's day-to-day with his arm, shoulder. but he wasn't in a sling yesterday, so that gives you some hope with the day-to-day. But nonetheless, that's down to 2 defensemen here.
And Schneider can't come up until after the trade deadline.
So Schneider's down or up, I guess you could say, because he is north of New York, but sent down a flight to the AHL. So really, your only locks or the only locked up players now that are in New York that are able to play defense are Fox, Harper, McCullough, and Trouba, which is another 2 pairing defense. Defensive pairings.
And look, nobody's saying that the jury's going to be done. He brought in a veteran guy like Justin Braun last year at the trade deadline. We don't know if he's going to bring in another defenseman. I can't see it happening. Because
I don't think there's a need for it. If they can
definitely
survive,
not a need if they can get healthy and Miller comes back from his suspension, especially. But what I'm saying is like maybe McCullough. I understand he's only played about 4 or 5 games since coming over to the Rangers. He hasn't really looked too good, in my opinion. But you never know with Drury, because we honestly, after the Tarasenko trade, we never thought we were even in the running for Patrick Kane anymore.
Look, if they can get through this week, I think they'll be just fine. Their next game's Wednesday at Philly. Philly's not that great. The Rangers kind of beat up on them the last time they played Philadelphia. And then they're home versus Ottawa the next night, Thursday, March 2nd. Ottawa, a young, solid team at times, but there's also times where you kind of catch them off guard. They were red hot until they played the Islanders. And then it's Saturday, March 4th after that, and that's at Boston. And then it kind of gets harder because then you're at Montreal. Then it's at Buffalo, who's having a great season. At Pittsburgh, always tough. Then versus Washington, versus Pittsburgh again. Like, it starts to get really difficult starting next week.
It's playoff hockey, and it's going to be playoff hockey for basically the whole month of March.
Yeah.
And honestly, with the whole news about Timo Meier going to the Devils, I feel like an Eastern Conference matchup with the New Jersey Devils just becomes more realistic by the day. I think that, it tends to see that ever since we came back against Carolina and we beat them in the Eastern Conference semifinals, and we really beat up on Carolina this year. I really don't believe in Carolina as much. Maybe I'm not on the hype train of Carolina. They're number 1 in the Metro Division, but it seems a lot real. It's getting more realistic by the day. I can see Boston being a first or second round type exit, but in my opinion, we might get a 2014 rematch, or 2012 rematch, I should say, of the Eastern Conference Finals of the New Jersey Devils and the New York Rangers. That's just in my opinion.
We can't really forget about the fact that the Rangers themselves. We can't really just think all of a sudden they're so much better than these other teams. But if we look at the Eastern Conference playoff picture right now, Boston, Carolina, Jersey, Toronto, Tampa, and the Rangers are all above a 640
Can never count
win
out
percentage.
Tampa either.
Not even that. It's the fact that only 3 of those teams are making through out of those 6 teams, and they're all above a 640 win percentage. The Eastern Conference is an absolute juggernaut right now compared to the Western Conference, and it's there's no guarantees that the Rangers even make it out of the first round. Do we think it's possible? Of course we do, but it's also very possible for teams like the Lightning, the Leafs, the Devils, the Canes, and the Bruins to also make it out of this first round as well. It makes it even more important for the Rangers to go out and get Patrick Kane right now, because right now you could probably say that the Rangers are on the same level as Tampa, Toronto, Jersey, Carolina, Boston. There's not too much that separates those teams right now. If the Rangers can get Patrick Kane, and Miller obviously coming back from the suspension, but Lindgren getting back to full health, somehow figuring out a way to bring up Schneider post-trade deadline, as long as the money works out, then the Rangers can kind of separate themselves. But at the end of the day, because of how stacked this Eastern Conference is, there's no guarantees right now that the Rangers even make it out of the first round with how much talent there is in this Eastern Conference. It's really, at this point, I mean, I understand Boston's 45-8-5 right now with 95 points.
They're ridiculous. They're good.
But there's besides them, I would really honestly say there's no guarantees right now that any of these teams make it out of the first round in comparison to another team right now. It's really, all these teams are toss-ups. There's no guarantees in my eyes right now. It's going to be a really fun time to watch these playoffs, but there's no way that these teams are getting out of here in 5 games minimum, which is something that the Rangers need to do, because we saw what happened last year with it. But with the amount of talent that are on these top 6 teams, I mean, every game in the series is likely going to 6 or 7, no matter no matter what.
And that's what hurt the Rangers in the Eastern Conference Finals.
Yeah.
They ran out of gas, and they were just tired, and they didn't look like themselves. And ultimately, that's what, you force more games, you play, that much games, and it just comes back to haunt you in the end.
We'll continue this Rangers talk a little bit more when Kenny Albert comes on. It is 3:15, so we do want to get into a couple more topics. It was a good spring training weekend, first weekend in spring training for both the Yankees and the Mets. From the Yankees side, I mean, Jason Dominguez hitting
moonshot.
An absolute moonshot, the switch hitter. I mean, he could be your starting left fielder the way he looked in spring training weekend. Anthony Volpe, 2 for 4, 2 stolen bases. Every ball that he was 2 for 4, every at bat there was a ball put in play. Exit velo above 90, 3 of them above 100. On the other side, over in Queens, Mauricio with an absolute moonshot of a home run. Brett Beatty to kick off spring training, leadoff bomb. I mean, these young guys so far for both sides have really, really been showing out thus far.
And what have we been talking about for the past few weeks? How are these guys gonna showcase their ability, showcase their gameplay for Billy Epler and Brian Cashman, showing that these guys can develop and be ready by opening day. It's very unlikely that Dominguez, Volpe, or even Peraza at this point are going to be on the opening day roster for the New York Yankees. Ronnie Mauricio, a little bit unlikely to be on that opening day roster, especially. But how about Brett Beatty? Brett Beatty, he really worked hard this winter. He spent some time with Troy Tulowitzki, really working on his defensive play, but also his offensive play. Brett Beatty coming out of Spring Lake High School in Texas, he really came out always known for his hitting, batted about 350 in the minor leagues. Absolutely terrific hitter, 20-plus home run potential. Especially at the big league level. Those are the guys that you really want to see progress into essentially, hopefully, the next David Wright, as we haven't really had a good third baseman since David Wright retired. Brett Beatty is definitely going to make a case to be that starting everyday third baseman. But then you got guys like Mark Vientos, who's been playing very well, too. Another 2 hits from Mark Vientos today as the Mets are playing the Cardinals right now. The Mets are losing right now. But Mauricio, Vientos, 4 hits each since starting spring training on Friday. Definitely something you want to build on and get better on. As Vientos will probably be on the opening day roster as a bench casualty, more of a defensive switch-in and type games, and also playing against left-handed pitching. But how about your guy? How about Daniel Vogelback hitting a couple doubles? Nick has typically said that Daniel Vogelback is not going to work this year. Daniel Vogelback is 25 pounds slimmer this year, and he looks like his bat swing has gotten a little better, a little faster, not as long at times. But these guys, these kids, their future is very bright. I think Dominguez reminds me a little bit of a Juan Soto type with his swing, just the right-handed version of Juan Soto. Dominguez has got a beautiful swing. Mauricio's got a beautiful swing. We'll see a little bit how these kids develop. Nick, honestly, what was your impression on the Dominguez home run and the Volpe having a nice weekend as well? And Peraza, he hit. I don't know who he hit the home run off of in practice, but I saw the home run and it was a bomb.
Shot. I don't remember.
I think he hit it off Ron Marinaccio. I think he hit it off of him.
I thought it was Herman actually.
Oh, it was Herman. Okay, yeah, that's right.
But nonetheless. Dominguez, just the fact that he's a switch hitter, he can play left field. He solves the void in left field, essentially, the way he's looked. His swings are so effortless. It's just easy pop.
Did you see Hicks got booed out of the stadium?
Yeah, I saw Hicks got booed. I saw Connor Falefa routine ground outs to short. I mean, these young guys, they're coming, and they don't care who you are, who's in front of them. They're going to run you over. And you saw that with Dominguez showing off the bat that he's for real. He can play with some of these guys. I understand spring training. Some guys are trying out there. They're not going up against Scherzer, Verlander, whoever it may be. But nonetheless, they're still raking. They're still easy pop. And then with Volpe on the other side, what more can you ask for with the shortstop? I mean, the videos that we're seeing of him defensively in practice, just making it look effortless. The arm strength is really starting to be shown off. There was a lot of rumors and proposals that, Volpe, when he comes to the big leagues eventually, that he'll be a second baseman because of the arm strength. It doesn't look like there's really too much of a difference in the arm strength here when Volpe's at shortstop, but his bat on the other side, I mean, man, can he hit the ball. And it's not just that he's hitting home runs either. Like Dominguez, Volpe was 2 for 4 with a single and a double. The Yankees were playing a lot of small ball, which is nice to see. Usually seeing a lot of home runs and stuff. That's the way the Yankees are. Volpe kind of changes that around a little bit. A lot of more singles and doubles, not swinging for the fences here, and it works. But the ones that really stood out to me was the stolen bases aspect. He's stealing second base easily, just timing up pitchers like it's nothing. He's doing that. Next pitch later, bang, steals third base like it's nothing. In time, not even close. Stuff like that really stood out to me that I thought was, wow, like this guy, he's got to be on the opening day roster. He has to be. It would be almost criminal if Boone and Cashman said, yeah, Anthony, you're not quite ready yet, because the way his spring training has gotten off, how can you keep him off that opening day roster? How can you? The way he's been playing, it really should be either him or Peraza at shortstop. And what's going on here? I mean, the Peraza hasn't shown out as much as Volpe has. And I know it's still early, like 3-4 games in, but man, Anthony Volpe's coming for Peraza. He's coming for Connor Falefa. He wants that starting shortstop job. He's done with AAA. He's done playing at Scranton. He wants to be in the Bronx.
The one thing that scouts have come out and publicly said and criticized Anthony Volpe was, especially early on in his professional career in AA and Single A, is that they typically say that his swing tends to get a little bit too long at times. Notably, he had a little bit of strikeout issues in AA, especially. But that's it for everyone. That's gonna, the kid's 22 years old. I mean, how you're going to criticize? You're going to criticize it. Some executives and some scouts are going to say you're going to criticize him for striking out a lot, but you're going to go through growing pains. I mean, you saw with Brett Beatty especially. He went through a lot of growing pains coming up for the Mets last year. I'm not saying that Brett Beatty and Anthony Volpe, they're compared to playing different positions, but Volpe is going to be that top of the order hitter. I feel like I can see for the Yankees especially, but I mean, you gotta be pleased with the fact that Volpe's showing out this early in spring training. Dominguez is showing out this early in spring training. Mauricio's showing out in spring training. Brett Beatty, these are guys that are really, they're fighting for a start. They're fighting for an opening day roster spot. So good for Volpe. I personally played against him back in high school too, so I know the kid is special. Definitely going to be a huge impact on this Yankees team. Going back to the point about Connor Falefa, I don't know what you see in the guy. I mean, he's got a terrific glove, but that's as a third baseman. I mean, we know the whole Donaldson story. We'll save that for another day again. But give Volpe a chance. Give Peraza a chance. It doesn't hurt to give him a chance.
Even Donaldson just striking out, looking in live at bats against his own teammates and stuff. He just. It's the same stuff over and over again with those two guys. And Falefa, like Connor Falefa, he's got a decent glove, but at the end of the day, he was still booting. He had one of the highest error rate amounts in all of baseball. He was up there with some of the most errors behind a guy not Fernando Tatis. Might have been Tim Anderson of the White Sox. Okay. I'm not sure, but he was up there, and then you had Boone backing him up, saying he's still one of the best defensive shortstops. I don't know what metrics he was looking at, because clearly that's not the case, because anybody could tell you that he's not a great shortstop. But he better watch out. Him and Donaldson better watch out, because Connor Falefa specifically, because Volpe's, he's on, he's right there, and even Peraza. Volpe's trying to jump Peraza right now, and I'm not against it. I would prefer Peraza right now, but if Volpe keeps doing what he's doing, sign me up for Anthony Volpe any day of the week.
They're all. I mean, if you're a Yankees, especially like Brian Cashman, you want these guys to play hard and fight for especially their jobs. I mean, in the future, if we see that Oswaldo Peraza or Anthony Volpe are going to be stars, you gotta come to the conclusion about what you're going to do with Gleyber Torres, Josh Donaldson, and Isaiah Connor Falefa. I could probably mostly see Gleyber Torres getting traded, especially if you see Peraza and Volpe taking a massive leap in the big leagues, especially. But that's a future topic to bring up.
We'll save that for Wednesday.
Wednesday, yeah. Wednesday is going to be a good show, especially, if you guys would like to call in, we do have about 5 minutes until Kenny Albert comes on. He's going to be on for about 10 to 15 minutes. Kenny has to get to the airport today as he's going to be calling a game for TNT tomorrow night, especially. Nick, go ahead. That's your thing. You can go ahead and give the phone number. That's your thing. I'm not going to take your thing.
Okay. 732-571-3493. As of course, this
Final chance.
is WMCX 88.9 West Long Branch, and you are listening to Down to the Wire. I was hoping Kenny would be on the call tonight for the Knicks Celtics game at the Garden, but I guess not. Which it is what it is. We'll still. I'm sure it's going to be Breen.
He might be. We'll ask
anyway.
him. I know he said he has to go to the airport today, so
yeah. Well,
we'll
then I would
ask him if
imagine
he's
he's going for the TNT Tuesday for basketball, maybe,
Possibly, yeah.
or if there's hockey on tomorrow night. I'm not too sure with what's going on with the schedule this week, but I mean, the Knicks have ever since Josh Hart came, they're undefeated. They're looking like one of the best teams in basketball.
Not the Nets.
No.
Nets have won 2 games since Kevin Durant's been.
And what was what they had 29 points at halftime the other night?
They lost by
right?
They lost by 46 points the other night.
Yeah, to Chicago, and I want to say it was 29 at half.
Yeah, they had 29 points.
Right, it was 29 at halftime. Yeah, that's. And then they
29 or 36, something like that.
And then they had 50 something at the end of the third, which is in today's NBA that's unheard of. And then what was it, 120 to 80 something final score?
Something like that. Did you see the Clippers? The Clippers and the Kings game?
Yeah,
the Sacramento Kings are making noise.
Yeah, they're third place, 10 games above 500, first time in 17 years.
Yeah.
And I saw this one this morning. So if people are unaware, Damian Lillard had 71 points last night in 39 minutes of play, and we were talking about this post All-Star game or the Celebrity All-Star game with DK Metcalf getting drug tested because of the dunks. They drug tested Damian Lillard last night right after the game. They asked him for a drug test.
Dropping 71 points.
Yeah. They said it was the first time he was ever asked to do such a thing, and it's not his first time. He has the third most 60-point games in NBA history behind, I believe, Wilt, and then Kobe Bryant, who has 6. Damian Lillard has 5. But he said that was the first time he was ever drug tested for something like that, and he said earlier, maybe a week or two ago, that they had him do a urine sample for the drug tests or whatever, and then last night was a needle. And then he's talking about him. He's not a big fan of needles, even though he's got tattoos and stuff like that. And the NBA knows that. But
he doesn't like getting needles. But how about?
But the drug test, the random drug test.
It's ridiculous, Nick. And the NBA and the sports should be ashamed of themselves just because they're. They're doing their job. They're playing the game that they love, and they got to worry about every single drug test and everything.
Especially just the fact that he said that he was drug tested, a little, not too long ago. A week or two. I don't remember what he said, but it was not like something outlandish where it was like, yeah, they tested me a month ago and they want to test me again. It was like a week. I want to say it was like a week or two ago that he was asked to to do the urine sample.
Yeah.
And then last night was with the needle and they took a blood sample.
Imagine Damian Lillard in the Garden. Oh, what could have been, man. Honestly, like Stephen A. Smith especially, he was like, on First Take this morning, he was like, if there's anybody other than Steph Curry I could have and play in Madison Square Garden, it'd be Damian Lillard. I mean, Damian Lillard's in a small market. If he was in the Garden dropping 71 points, you probably get your jersey retired on the spot. That's how.
Yeah, what I would do for someone like Damian Lillard, just that star.
I mean, when is enough with him in Portland? I mean, they're not ready to win.
He's all about the
loyalty.
Yeah,
which is good, but you're.
It's clear.
Why waste your career, dude?
Yeah, and it's also clear that he's really not going to win in Portland.
For those who don't know, Kenny Albert should be calling in about 2 minutes. Kenny Albert is coming on our show today. This is Down to the Wire with Nick Giantonio and Joe Palminteri. For those who don't know, Kenny Albert is the son of Marv Albert, legendary, especially college basketball, March Madness broadcaster, and Marv Albert. Marv Albert mostly covered the NBA during his illustrious career, calling calls with Dick Vitale. If nobody knows who Dick Vitale is, I don't know how you don't know who Dick Vitale is. Also, legendary college basketball broadcaster. Those two created so many terrific childhood moments, especially for me, on their great calls. The one call I can remember the most is, you remember the Villanova game, the national championship game, Villanova versus North Carolina, when Jenkins hit that game-winning buzzer beater 3 to win the.
Yeah, but that was Nance.
You sure?
Positive, because I liked North Carolina growing up, and I was heartbroken by that. It was Nance.
That was Nance?
Albert was retired. Oh no, he wasn't retired by then, but yeah, no,
It might have
that
been
was Nance.
no. It might have been the Duke game where Luke May hit that game winner.
That was also NCAA tournament, and that was against Kentucky.
Yeah,
Maybe I don't remember who that was.
That might have been the game winner I was thinking about.
I'm not sure.
Because I know Nance always does March Madness, especially too.
I've known Marv Albert just from hearing the Michael Jordan, like all of his everything about Michael Jordan related. He had most of the Michael Jordan games. Obviously, his famous "yes" was like something that I don't know.
I swear, I really thought it was Luke May. I really thought it was Jenkins. I forgot that was Nance. It had to. I know it was a buzzer beater, and he said yes. I know that saying too. I really thought that was Marv Albert when the Luke May hit that shot. It must have been that.
Because I don't know. That's like PTSD for me hearing something like hearing that call. How heartbroken I was after they lost to Nova.
Listen,
the way they did.
Some of my favorite broadcasters, Kenny Albert, Jim Nance, Marv Albert, Joe Buck especially. You know, these guys really paved the way for, especially myself, to become a broadcasting and training radio host.
Sure have. We'll take a quick break here. We'll get Kenny Albert on the phone lines. Of course, don't go away. Yeah, we'll take like a 2 to 3 minute break. Once we have Kenny Albert ready to go, we'll put him right on, and it'll be us two and Kenny Albert for the next 15 to 20 minutes, so hang tight. We are back here on Down to the Wire. We do have Kenny Albert on the line, so we are going to put him through right now. Kenny Albert, of course, Emmy nominee, one of the most well-known play-by-play announcers in North American sports, voice of the New York Rangers radio, covers the TNT NHL play-by-play. You hear him doing NFL work for Fox as well. Kenny, thank you so much for taking the time here to come on with us for a little bit. It really is much appreciated.
Hey, Kenny, how you doing?
Thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
Yep.
Kenny, I want to get into it right away. So I know your whole family was in broadcasting with your two uncles, your dad, of course. Broadcasting is something that you have said in the past. You've always been around it since you were little. How did you know right away that broadcasting was something that you specifically wanted to get into, to follow in your family's footsteps? But on top of that, was there ever a time where that goal or that aspiration really just maybe potentially ever faded away?
No, it definitely never faded away, guys. It was something I always wanted to do. Like you said, grew up around it with my father and two uncles, and I received a tape recorder for my birthday when I was 5 or 6 years old, a toy tape recorder, and I started announcing games into the tape recorder. When I was old enough, I would bring it to Madison Square Garden or Shea Stadium and call games, and just felt like getting the reps was so important. And then real lucky in high school when a local cable station came to my school to film a girls' basketball game, and I volunteered to do play-by-play and wound up working about 75 to 100 games in the various sports through the next 3 years, on to college at NYU, called Division III men's and women's basketball, and then was real fortunate again when I was hired by the Baltimore Skipjacks of the American Hockey League in 1990. And I was hired to do radio play-by-play, but also was involved in so many other duties in the team office, marketing, public relations, sales, and it was a tremendous learning experience. But again, having the opportunity to get the reps and do 80 games a year for 2 seasons in Baltimore was just so valuable.
Kenny, it's Joe. It's Joey. Nice to finally speak to you again. It's always great talking to you. You know, you really had a big influence on my young broadcasting career, especially. You are one of the reasons why I like to start a radio show. But what would you give some advice to the younger generation, especially as it seems like the radio podcasting is getting a lot more popular nowadays, and you've got guys trying to showcase their abilities to call, especially sports, especially. What would you give to the younger guys like me and myself and Nick? What kind of advice would you give to us?
Biggest piece of advice, Joey, is to try and do as much as you can, whether it's internships, podcasts, working at high school or college radio or TV stations. There are so many opportunities out there these days. When I was in college, the internet didn't exist. There was cable TV, but no satellite TV or radio. So now at so many colleges, whether it's an ACC school, Big Ten school, so many of the other conferences, they have their own networks, and the students have the opportunity to work various jobs, whether it's in front of the microphone, in front of the camera, behind the scenes as a cameraman or woman, as a producer, director, graphics producer, replay producer. There are just so many opportunities out there. So I would encourage getting as much experience as you can, even if it is not the exact area that you want to go into. And as far as advice for people your age who do actual broadcasts and podcasts, do as much reading as possible. You should spend about, if you're interested in sports broadcasting, I would say spend 3 or 4 hours a day reading everything you can get your hands on, even actual newspapers. And I know I might sound like a dinosaur, but when you go on the internet or you click on an article on your phone, you're only clicking on that specific headline. But when you read an actual newspaper, you're gaining knowledge about everything. So I still read 5 newspapers a day. I'm also on the internet for hours. So the old saying, knowledge is power. And the more knowledge you have, you'll be able to talk about so many different subjects on the podcast, on the radio show moving forward.
Yes, sir. That's honestly, a big part of my life. I've always, my mom and my parents always ask me why I spend so much time on the phone. It's because I'm reading sports articles, trying to gain as much knowledge as I can so that I know what I'm talking about. So someone's talking to me about a certain topic about sports, I actually know what I'm talking about. For example, I'm reading Rangers, Mets, Knicks, Nets, and even teams that I don't really typically watch a lot. I always follow up on what's going on in the big news. There's just some days where I don't have to see, some of the less important news, especially the teams that I don't really watch, like the San Diego Padres, how, for example, they just signed Manny Machado to an 11-year deal worth $350 million. I don't have to read stuff like that, but I choose to because I want to have as much knowledge as I can, honestly.
Well, it sounds like you're on top of it and ahead of the game. But, I love reading and following sports and news, and it's just something that I started doing at a young age, and it really goes a long way. If you're doing a broadcast or a podcast and somebody brings up a certain topic, you're able to say, oh, yeah, I read about that yesterday, and you can add that educated opinion.
100%.
Kenny, I want to talk about hockey for a little bit here. You have said, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you have said that hockey is the easiest sport in your mind to call. Now, out of all the sports that you have done, even starting back when you were a kid through high school, even with the AHL, what makes hockey in your eyes the easiest to call? Because Joe and I are both hockey fans.
Huge Ranger fans.
Some of these names I understand are just the names in general. Some of them might be a little bit more difficult, to pronounce and stuff like that. But on top of that, the game is so incredibly fast. How come that a game like hockey, in your eyes, is easier to call than, let's say, maybe a football game, for example?
Well, most people would probably not agree with me, first of all. That's my personal opinion, and people are surprised to hear the answer. But to me personally, it's the easiest because I've been doing it the longest, number one. And number two, I do a lot of hockey on the radio, as you know, with the Rangers, aside from my national work with TNT. On the radio, it's just a continuous call. For the 60 minutes of play, you're just calling the game, describing what's going on. Basketball is similar. I would say it's the most similar to hockey because of the continuous flow. It's 48 minutes, not 60. There are probably more whistles with fouls than stoppages during hockey games. Football's the most rhythmic. It's one play, and then it's 20 or 25 seconds. It's another play, and then it's 20 or 25 seconds. Not that it's hard, but I think the rhythm of football is a lot different than hockey or basketball. To me, baseball is the most challenging.
Wow.
Because when I did or do baseball, it's not every day. I don't work for a team. I'm amazed at the people in my profession who work 162 baseball games a year because that's a lot of time to fill. I work through the years 10, 15, maybe 18 baseball games in a season. Now it's less than that because of my hockey postseason duties. So again, there's a lot of research, and you're coming in doing one game a week or one game every 2 weeks, and there's so much downtime between pitches. So you really have to hopefully have a terrific color analyst to fill some of that time. But that's why I answered the question how I did, as far as hockey being the easiest and baseball the most challenging. Now, I've done some other sports, boxing and track and field and volleyball. Those sports are obviously a lot different than the ones that I call on a regular basis. So there's a big learning curve, but a lot of fun to be involved in some of those other ones as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'm amazed by
the
what you're talking
logic
about.
makes sense.
The logic definitely makes sense. I would have never thought you would say baseball's the hardest to especially cover because, you're constantly I feel, well, nowadays, now we got the pitch clock and everything, so I feel like at least the game might move at a different sort of pace, a faster pace especially. The pitch clock is definitely something that looks to be a lot more challenging with especially the major leagues, but, I personally would have never thought you would have said baseball is probably the most challenging, especially. But Kenny, I know you got I know we only have you for a certain amount of time. I know you got to get to the airport. Are you calling a game tonight?
No. If I were calling a game tonight and I were heading to the airport, I'd probably be in trouble because I wouldn't get there in time. So.
Oh no. Okay. Yeah.
Given that it's 4:00.
Yeah.
No, I'm heading to Las Vegas for a game on Wednesday. Mm-hmm. And I was supposed to fly tomorrow morning, but with the weather reports of snow expected here in the Northeast, decided a couple hours ago to try to get there a little bit earlier.
Yeah, I know. Please get there safe. I definitely don't want to. We're definitely going to ask you at least a couple more questions if you have enough time. Maybe 2 more questions for you.
Yep, absolutely.
Definitely want you to get to the airport on time and not miss your flight. But I've really been thinking about this question. I don't know how you're going to answer about this, but out of any sport you've ever covered, what has been your most memorable favorite call you've ever called? I know you've got the Panarin call. I know you've got multiple calls in your career that you've called, but just give me the best.
Well, it's really hard to narrow it down to one, and I might have mentioned this to Joey. I wrote a book which is coming out in August or September where I go through a number of the various favorite calls in the different sports that I've worked. Just to give you a quick answer, in baseball, the Bautista bat flip is the one that I'm asked about most frequently. Back in 2015, the Toronto-Texas playoff series. In football, called 5 divisional playoff games through the years. The 49ers-Saints, January 2012, an unbelievable game, 4 touchdowns in the last 4 minutes, back and forth. Yeah. Then I had other moments, not necessarily games, but the Victor Cruz 99-yard touchdown against the Jets certainly stands out.
I remember that.
I called the Giants-Patriots most recent Super Bowl the world feed, the international feed, which was not seen in the United States, but it was seen in just about every other country. So that was obviously a bucket list item. In hockey, there are probably too many to mention. I've worked 6 Olympics, so the women's gold medal game in 2018 when the U.S. defeated Canada in the shootout. Worked the Rangers winning the Cup in '94 for NHL radio. I was working down in D.C. at the time, but called that series for NHL radio. The Rangers runs in 2014 when they went to the final, 2012, 15, and again last year when they went to the conference final. Calling the Stanley Cup on TV for the first time, Tampa Bay, Montreal in 2021. That's certainly up there as well. And our crew will have the Stanley Cup final this year along with Eddie Olczyk and Keith Jones. So
yes.
I'll definitely be adding that one to the list.
That's huge. Honestly, what really sparks, what I really noticed about you, and especially what you do with your calls, and especially the Panarin call, I realize what's the whole point around, letting the crowd, letting especially the broadcast just hear everyone at home just hear the entire, especially Madison Square Garden. I was at that game that Panarin scored the game winner in overtime to send the Rangers to the Eastern Conference semifinals. I was at that game, and I've never heard the Garden explode that loud in my entire life. I've been going to games since 2010. I've never heard it that loud in my life. And I noticed when I rewatched the game on, I had it tape recorded. I noticed that you said Panarin shoots, he scores, and then it just went silent for you. What's the whole what's like the whole dilemma around that, like where you just let the crowd speak for itself when he scored that goal?
Right. I think somebody timed it. It was 1:56 without talking.
Yeah.
We've all heard the phrase "a picture tells 1,000 words," and we've seen it with so many other calls in other sports, baseball in particular, on big home runs. As a TV broadcaster, there's really no reason to say much after you make the initial call in a situation like that, because let the director do his thing or her thing and show the shots of the players celebrating on the ice, the crowd. Now, it would have been a lot different if that were on the road, if that were in Pittsburgh, and it was silent in the building, and Panarin scored the goal in Game 7, I probably would have been silent for about 10 seconds and then picked it up, because you don't have the crowd reaction like you do at Madison Square Garden. So the venue has a lot to do with it, whether it's in a home game or an away game, and also TV versus radio. If that's a radio call, I call the goal, maybe pause for 2 seconds, and then start upright again. So there are definite differences, home and away, TV versus radio. That one happened to be a home game and a TV game, which is why I just got out of the way and shut up and let the viewers listen and hear to what was going on in the building.
Yeah, and honestly, that's probably one of my most favorite calls, especially by you.
Do those calling the Ranger games, whether it's on TNT or even when you're on 98.7, do those Ranger games become a little bit easier for you because you have a little bit of that bias, just being around them since you were a little kid? Your dad obviously calling some of those games, you calling, a hefty amount of New York Ranger games. Do those games become easier for you, or you feel like they still feel like a fan, or now that like when they're on TNT, you have to kind of keep that moderation when they're playing somebody else?
Absolutely. When the games are on TNT, we're calling it right down the middle, 50-50.
Right.
You have to talk about the Rangers 50% of the time and the other team 50% of the time. Especially when, if it's a blowout, obviously you're going to talk about one team a little more than the other. But
Right.
If it's a close game, it's right down the middle, and you don't have any bias, and you're calling the game the same when one team scores as the other. But sure, I'm obviously a lot more familiar with the Rangers because I'm around them all the time and call their games on the radio. So I could probably wake up in the middle of the night and call a Ranger game without looking at a roster. The skating styles of the players. Panarin has the hair sticking out of the helmet. Zibanejad has the hair sticking out of the helmet. There are different characteristics of the players. Now you get to learn those from the other teams. I have Vegas, Carolina this Wednesday, so you certainly study and read up on as much as you can leading up to that game, and watch prior games and go to practices and talk to coaches. But sure, when you're around a team for a significant amount of time, it does make it a little bit easier.
That was going to be my next question, actually. This is my last question for you, Kenny. What is your preparation towards calling these games? Like you just said, you would go down, talk to the coaches, talk to maybe some of the players. Like what's your preparation 5 hours before the game?
Well, it really starts about a week before for every
okay.
game.
There you go.
I have a checklist that I go through, and it involves reading articles for the entire week, watching previous games, talking to other broadcasters, and gathering notes and anecdotes about each team and many of the players. And football is the sport that you put in the most time because you're not following one specific team. I might have a matchup week 15 where I haven't seen either team all year, and there are over 50 players to learn on both sides. So I would say a football work week's probably 30 to 40 hours preparing for one game, and that's Monday through Thursday at home, and then Friday traveling into the home city, going to practice, talking to coaches and players, doing the same thing Saturday. For not as much for a Ranger radio game because I'm around the team all the time, but for a TNT game, I'll start reading all of the articles from both cities about a week before, and then on Wednesday we'll go to the practices in the morning skate, talk to players, talk to coaches, and then get ready for the game that night. So there's a lot that goes into it, but it's fun work. Nothing else I'd rather be doing, and hopefully it never gets old.
Kenny, my last question for you is, in your eyes, and what you obviously aspire, in your eyes, what makes a great announcer, and what do you strive for in your eyes here? What makes a great announcer?
Well, I think it's a combination of a lot of the things I talked about, the preparation, the excitement level during broadcasts, You don't want to just be monotone when the play is picking up, when a goal is scored. Obviously, you want to raise your excitement level, bringing pertinent information to the viewers, knowing the rules, knowing the history, knowing the statistics. There's a lot that goes into it. You always strive for the perfect broadcast. I'm not sure how often you have one, but that's the goal each and every night, whether on TV or radio, no matter the sport.
Definitely something that we probably should all be striving for as whether you are in the broadcasting field already or at least aspiring to be one.
Yeah, Kenny, honestly, thank you so much for being on our show today. I know you got to catch a flight. Have a safe flight. I hope that we can reconnect in the future for our show, and especially just have a talk in general. I'll probably see you at the Garden for the playoffs, especially if you're going to be there. Hopefully we can reconnect soon, Kenny.
Well, I appreciate it, guys. Thanks for having me on. Look forward to hopefully doing it again during the playoffs.
Thank you, Kenny, very much.
Thank you, Kenny.
Thanks, guys.
Wow.
That was Kenny Albert, everyone. That was actually probably our best interview. Absolutely terrific guy. You see he wants to give advice to us and especially the young generation who are striving to become broadcasters. That was actually a terrific, learning experience. It just shows how much that me and Nick need to grow, especially you're always growing in the world of broadcasting, but 40 hours a week, just especially studying these players is absolutely, it's just mind blowing. So
I knew that there was a lot. Like, I had a feeling, even when you asked the question, like, oh, he's probably going to say, like, something crazy. But I wasn't expecting, like...
I didn't expect 40 hours.
Not even just a week before, but the 40 hours as well. Was not expecting that at all for a number like that. I was thinking, just because he's got the Rangers games and he does the National with the TNT as well, I was thinking maybe, like, 3 to 4 days, if anything, before each game, just because he's got to not only know the Ranger games on the radio, but then also do those National games, like the Vegas-Carolina one he's got. So the fact that he's doing... both of those and, starting a week prior in advance.
Usually
pretty
Mondays
nuts.
We do the down of the wire player of the week, but I think that we're going to skip it today.
We'll save it for Wednesday.
For Wednesday, because we had a really rough week in New York sports last week. Besides the Knicks, I think that we had a really rough week, especially for Brooklyn. Right now, my player of the week probably would have been Ronnie Mauricio, but it is spring training. But I'm not really I don't really want to talk about that right now. We're gonna get into it on Wednesday. Let's see how the week plays out.
Yeah. If it wasn't for me, it would have been Volpe just for the 2 for 4, 2 stolen bases. But if it wasn't him, it would have had to have been Randall. Yeah, I had a 40-point night against Washington on Friday. No one else really, though, kind of stood out, to be honest. No one on Brooklyn did.
Brooklyn was
the
terrible.
Knicks were, they're still winning games. If I had to give a team of the week, it's the Knicks, without a doubt.
Oh, without a doubt.
The players-wise, which I guess is almost a good in a sense that, we're not just singling out somebody on the Knicks right now. They're all playing really well together, which I think is a good thing. But I think it would, for me, it would have to have been either Volpe or Randall. But even still, Mauricio, I wasn't ready to see, I was ready to see Mauricio do well, but to see that ball that he hit, man, oof.
At least
future is bright for the New York
I think
Mets.
it was 114 off the bat.
Yeah, what was the distance? I know it went out to
390.
Yeah, that's crazy. Because I saw even he didn't call it the concourse, but he did call it something. It was like right by that sidewalk back there, and that's like.
And there's nothing better than a Gary Cohen moonshot call. I'll tell you that. Gary Cohen, honestly.
Yeah, you could tell him, Keith, and Ron were all like, "Whoa!"
All
like that.
Crazy.
Like, that ball was crushed.
Honestly, just getting Kenny on the show is just astonishing. It just shows we're dedicated to what we're doing. We want to interview these star-studded announcers. And we're trying every day. We try to get better at our craft. We're always taking notes, always following up on our sports and just how we can get better for the future of our broadcasting abilities and our podcast.
That's like
That's
something
it.
something you really never forget is getting to interview a guy like Kenny Albert, who is literally about to go catch that flight and then go call a national TV game. And then when we go to put on TNT Wednesday night, it's like, oh my God, we just had a conversation with this guy for 25 minutes.
Yeah,
It's crazy.
And if anybody ever would like to come on the show, more than welcome to call in or email us, or not email us, just DM us or anything.
Reach
out to us, because the one thing me and Nick are, we're very welcoming. We'll definitely have a conversation about anything. We have a lot of knowledge in the sports world, especially always reading up on our games, especially our New York team. That's why we're a New York-based podcast, because we absolutely are diehard New York fans. But
yeah,
Nick, that's all I got. We had an absolutely incredible show. Couldn't thank Kenny enough. Nick, thank you also. I mean, we had a great show.
Yeah, this, of course, has been Down to the Wire here on WMCX.
Take care, everyone.
88.9 West Long Branch, New Jersey. As always, at dtw.sports on Instagram and TikTok, at Down to the Wire 9 on Twitter as well. We'll see you here on Wednesday from 2 to 4 p.m. We'll have more sports content. Can't guarantee you Kenny Albert's going to be here, but, we brought it to you today. So